Welcome to the Zulu One Podcast. Today we're joined by my systemic brother, Svi Soudai, former tech and business leader turned facilitator of deep personal and systemic transformation. Svi works with individuals, couples, and organizations to expose hidden patterns, unlock real change. His approach blends somatic practices, systemic constellations, and indigenous wisdom, and sharp, integration-driven inquiry. Today we dive into his journey and the ideas shaping his work on healing and transformation. Let's begin. Good morning, brother.
Aloha.
Good to see you, man.
Great to see you.
How you doing?
You know that it is a very, very open question, but I am doing fabulous. My heart is open. Bliss is radiating through me. Life is magical and just ready to share that in the most authentic and open-hearted way.
Nice, man. Good. For the people that don't hear the first part, we did, Svi and I, when we start every podcast, we start with a different type of meditation. And for whatever reason, the integrated self came in, where you connect with your inner child, ourselves when we're an adolescent, right, as a teenager coming of age, and then at our 20-year-old self. So we grab pieces of ourselves that sometimes we left behind, sometimes we disconnected with, or sometimes we're fully integrated with. So what came up during the meditation for you?
Beautiful question. I'm imagining, those little Russian dolls where you take one off and you go to a little one and it gets smaller and smaller, and it's just this magical, and then you see the small one, and then seeing that part of yourself and then rebuilding it again and putting each piece back to this integrated self, and knowing when you go through these different parts of our lives, these archetypes that we look back on, the different versions of us that we look back on, they're all a part of us and how we became here. And then you strip them all away when you go into these shamanic death initiations and these, Kundalini awakenings and all these spiritual consciousness modalities. And then you still have to be you. And it can be a trap sometimes either way. You still get to your essence, and just honoring all those parts of myself, knowing they're a part of me, whatever I did when I was younger to whoever I am now, and that they never leave you. You just become more integrated and whole through that process.
Yeah, it's like picking up the pieces that we left behind to protect ourselves, right? And that's the work that we do, right? The work that we do is to integrate, to deal with those defense mechanisms, to deal with those parts that we had to separate from because of trauma, unresolved trauma, whatever you want to call it, separations, energies, blockages, whatever that is. However, whatever modality you subscribe to is powerful, right? To pick up those pieces and say, I'm fully in alignment with every piece that I am, and then fully in alignment with myself and with my purpose. And then you kind of can go external when that internal alignment happens. So I'm always curious about how people process through that, right? Like how they're dealing with those pieces that are out of alignment. And when they click into alignment, you create momentum, right? This like incredible, beautiful momentum. So, and momentum can usually overcome anything. So yeah, I'm excited to get perspectives from people,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Svi, last time that we talked, we went into, it was a couple of years ago, right? We talked probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it wasn't on video. It was just us, in my backyard kind of talking and doing stuff. And, I know a lot of things have shifted since then, and you've gone through some pretty, some pretty epic adventures, I'd say. So tell me a little bit about what's happened since then in the last couple of years, things that you've done, the modalities that you've explored.
Every time that I feel whatever that word initiation is kind of like leveling out, life decides to say, hey, wait a second, hold my beer. You're going on another adventure.
Hold my beer.
And I'm looking for some stability, or thinking that this is the way it is. And, I found some beautiful modalities to really put frameworks on some of my understanding of how to like walk this path. One of those were the gene keys, things like human design, astrology, plant medicines. These have all helped me really create that structure internally to be able to walk this path with some sort of guidance. Otherwise, I'm just flying, through the ethers, and it can become very intimidating, especially when you have this feeling coming from a spiritual mother and growing up in constellations and in the shamanic worlds and constellations worlds, and you see the field, you see the magic, you see the pain, you see the suffering.
Mm.
So I've been curious since I think I came out of the womb, but when I first realized it, just this innate asking questions, to a point where in fourth grade, my teacher told me I could no longer ask questions and I had coupons. And, we talked about imprints, and
Yeah.
she proceeded to, lose her job for stunting my growth. But I was always like, why? Why is this? Right. And I'm sure we've all dealt with that. Like, why is religion this? Why is God this? Your parents tell you something, like, why? And that journey continues to show me and give me clarity. And I get the answer, and then I'm like, that's it. And I'm kind of like on to the next adventure. So 3 years, relationships have come and gone. I lost my father. My brother got cancer. Some really big family things, understanding, going to different, committing to a relationship, committing to a relationship with a woman with a child, stepping into unknown territory. In the human design gene key framework, I have this profile of a 3-5, and it's the changer. It's trial and error. And the first time I came across this framework, it talked about relationships, and it just laughed and it just said "ha" for my profile.
Mm.
And I was like, okay. Not because, that I use that to attach to it. I feel like all these frameworks are part of the process, and then you let them all go, and that's part of my essence as well. But it really helped me understand, like, why are my relationships so quick? And there's a human part of me that's like, what's going on? It doesn't feel good to the human. You get all excited, you fall in love, you do the things, and then all of a sudden, like, everything changes. And so that has been my life. I've learned to dance with that, to love it, to accept it. And having some of these frameworks, I have this shadow of chaos in my gene keys.
Mm.
And it's through that shadow that comes the gift of innovation. And through that gift comes the city of innocence. And so if I can learn to see these shadows, understand them, understand them, embody them, then from there, everything is possible.
Yeah, it's like you have have you seen Bagger Vance?
Yes.
Where Will
Long
Smith
time
kind
ago.
of shows up out of nowhere, and you have that a little bit of that characteristic, right? That you like kind of meander into somebody's life and then have this profound change, and then like sudden as mystically as you appear, you kind of disappear through that process. We've been very lucky that we've been friends for a long time, so and I'm very close with your family, and you're very close with my family, so hopefully we don't fall into that category. But
I won't. No.
I totally understand where that comes from. Like I get that. I could see. Because I think that's not, I don't want to say curse, because that's not the right word. The gift of the truth teller is sometimes it uncovers, and we see that in constellations a lot, right? Is that when we, us, and I don't get to do this a lot. And Tiziano Guerzo just came on. We're kind of the all contemporary age wise, right? And you get to talk to guys that are very in the masculine, right? That are also facilitators. And then we get to wrestle these concepts out, right? Like we can challenge each other like brothers, and like, we're systemic brothers, right? And so it's like, you get to kind of explore these things, and you say, hey, as a facilitator, sometimes uncovering the truth is so in integrity that you risk like your personal relationship with the person when you do that. And that's such a, but it's a sacrifice that's needed in the truth telling, right? And uncovering, and it's not like we're telling that like we know the truth. We're simply acknowledging what it is and uncovering that. And the people in our personal lives reject us in that way. Like you can see that's the piece, and that's the cost. That's the exchange, right?
So you touched on something that my heart has been beaming probably my whole life, but even more in the past month, 2 months. And I've been involved in some other initiation, one called the Pachacuti Mesa tradition, which is from the Andes, Quechua, where they work with altars. And we do this animal journey where we look for like our animal ally. And I don't get really visuals, comes in, and it's the king cobra. and I already had like a understanding of this cobra. There was a song that I loved, and in the line of the song it says, "The kiss of a cobra can be both the poison and the cure. The only defense is a heart that is pure." And you mentioned something of what is truth? Who are we to know truth? And you've heard that saying, maybe there's your truth, my truth, maybe nothing but the truth,
Drives
or
me
there's your version,
crazy.
my version, and then there's somewhere in between. But I do believe when we listen, when we're clear, when we're in our own agency, just like the field, there is universal truth
Yes.
beyond the projection, beyond the triggers, beyond the wounds.
Hmm.
There is a universal truth, right? I'm wearing this hat. You have that mic. And those are simple terms, but in what we're trying to express when we open our hearts. But most of us are in our own worlds, rightfully so. There's so many distractions. There are so many things keeping us from our own agency. And that's not to say there's some malevolent force, but ultimately there are a lot of things that are not allowing us to tune into our intuition, which is our gut, the real brain. And that's where the most amount of mitochondria exist, our cells, that's the umbilical cord, that's the life force. And through life, through trauma, through maybe not doing healthy things, through not moving the body, just very simple things, and the breath, we lose touch with that intuition when everyone's like, I knew better. And it's like you knew better, but the agency or the lack of truth in you was keeping you from doing what you ultimately knew. And you had to learn that lesson, and everything happens exactly how it has to happen. But the clearer we can get with our own agency, our own truth, it might be different. You might see this differently. I might see this differently. When we listen to understand, not to agree or to disagree someone's perspective, we can find common truth in that. And that is something where I feel, as this truth teller, which I don't love wearing that thing, but I know it's something that there's nothing I can do. And so, quick story, a little hesitant to how to tell this, but I had someone in my life just recently ask me to go on a trip, and they told me basically they would pay for my whole trip to go, all expense paid trip. And it was a very exciting proposition. And I was like, of course, who doesn't? But there was something that came up. I won't go into the full details. I'll keep it a little bit of a mystery. And I said in that moment that this isn't aligned with my truth. And I kind of gave my truth. And in that, it immediately created this distortion in the field where that person no longer felt comfortable me going. But now, just yesterday, 8 days later, on the same date I was going to go, I was invited to a retreat in Tulum, Mexico, with my dear brother from Bali,
Mm.
where it's exactly aligned with what I want to be doing, sharing this medicine. And it all expense, I just have to pay for my flight, hosting me. And I was just like, when you say no to something that is not aligned, you make space for what is truly aligned. And so many times that phrase FOMO, that we're afraid of missing out if we say no to a relationship, to a
Yeah.
job, out of fear,
Yep.
out of survival. We have many reasons, but if we can really tune in and like follow that full yes, like it's a phrase that I always really didn't like hearing. If it's not a full yes, it's a full no. But I'm like, what is a full yes? But now I've really tuned in to my body gets this
Mm.
full somatic like move towards it, like in a constellation. You just feel it in the field, and you're like, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to have its challenges. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have issues. There's going to be obstacles along that path. And it might be a relationship that was a full yes in the moment. You went, a few months later, it wasn't. And that's okay too. But to follow that full yes and check in along the way without doubting, without letting the mind, the fear, the programming come in. And it's just such a magical way to be able to live life and really be in tune with that part of yourself.
Yeah, you mentioned a part that I'm just fascinated about, like people, having this conversation of my truth, your truth, and what this is. I'm like, we know in constellations that the truth is emergent, acknowledging what is. And you said some stuff like, that's not biased by our crap and our trauma and our blocks and the stories that we tell ourselves, all this stuff that we're dealing with. But it's like, who do we think we are that we own the truth? what arrogance to say that I have my version and like, no. There's just the emergence of this incredible gift of what is, right? That we in this process of constellations, we discover what is together and say, and for people that aren't necessarily super familiar with constellations, you pick people to represent you or dynamics in your family system, and it acknowledges what is, like what it uncovers is the truth. The mom never saw you, dad was emotionally distant, siblings were in the places that they weren't supposed to, that creates entanglements in the family system. Like literally out of this phenomenological process emerges this beauty, profound thing that is truer. It's like the base ingredients of reality. It's wild.
Yeah. So what I love about the field and constellations, and since I've been 21, 22, you've been in it for just as long, when you pick someone to represent yourself and you can no longer hide from yourself. And when you see the person like doing what you do, they've never met you for the most part, because you're not supposed to pick someone. Generally, you don't even know why you picked that person. It could be a male or a female, depending on gender. That doesn't matter. But ultimately, that person had an energy, and then when you talk to them after, they have it. I remember doing one with Eric Lopez, one of our teachers, mentors, brothers. And he knew, just like you, that we're facilitators. So he made sure, like, blindfold, triple blind, quadruple blind. He just tried to throw every curveball so I couldn't control this constellation. And I picked a woman to represent me. And it was all like in the mind. And she was just kind of losing it. She was kind of like banging her head. And I felt kind of bad because I'm like, oh, clearly, like I'm doing that in my own mental chatter. And then I went up to her after and kind of like apologized. You have to represent me. And she's like, no, I deal with the same thing, all the time.
Yeah.
And just like that, like, wow. But then seeing yourself, you can no longer hide from yourself. And we, as humans, have a tendency, and I'm human, you're human.
Yep.
And as our other teacher, Michelle, says, we're not perfect, we're better, we're human. So knowing that we're all in this together, no matter how advanced, no matter how high level of consciousness, no matter how many Shwama journeys you do, it's part of the process. But in that, we make so many, the mind, the ego wants to keep us safe, rightfully so. But at the same time, you'll say a truth to someone, and we've seen it in the field where they can't, even the paper is blind, they pick the person, they see themselves, and they still, something in them, for if it's fear, if it's the blind loyalty, if it's an attachment, if it's a wound, will not allow them. They're like, no, that's not me. And everybody else is watching like, how is that not you?
Yeah.
And it's wild to see that, and know that is a constant thing going on. So that's why it requires this effort, this discipline, courage, because to see your shadows, to see your samskaras, to look at your wounds and really like take full responsibility for it, is not for the faint of heart. You can no longer blame everyone in the world for your problems. And unfortunately, that's a lot easier because it's easy. We talked about that victim consciousness tons of times. And if we stay in that, it's very unlikely. It's going to be a lot more challenging to move forward in your own sovereignty, in your own agency, because you're constantly saying, oh, it's the relationship because I'm this, it's the job because I'm this, it's my bank account because I'm this, it's politics because I'm this. And ultimately, yes, those all can be forces in why you might not feel you can do what you do. But when you say yes to wanting to see the truth, then you have the courage and the trust and the love to move forward in your truth. And that in that moment can always change. But that's where that true like leap of faith, knowing that God, the creator, Michelle says Mickey Mouse, whoever you believe in, there's something bigger than you, and you can't control it as much as you think you can.
Yeah, and this brings up, I watched the season 3, episode 1 of Shrinking. You and I were talking about that the other. And he's like, the field will show you and repeat patterns in your life until you say, shit, I got to deal with this, right? And that can manifest as geopolitical conflict, your internal politics of your home, right? The internal politics of your country, the us
Mm,
versus them, the meta perpetrators, and the things will show up in your life to give you every single excuse to maintain that blind loyalty and not
mm,
assume the responsibility to say, I can transmute, I can have the alchemy that going from victim to victor, right? That's like the healing, the
mm,
hero's journey, the hero's journey, the healing journey, the all of the stories and the meta narratives of the universe talk about going from that victim perpetrator into the victor, right? And through a process of an assumption of responsibility. Man,
absolutely. And yeah, that's what I love about, this gene key framework is there's 64 collective shadows that we all feel on this level of reality. And that also relates to the 64 codons that exist within our DNA. You and I are familiar with epigenetics,
hmm,
how that affects within ourselves and what happened when we were in our mom's womb, what happened when our grandmother, our egg was already in their womb. So if they experienced pain, suffering, moving from a land, uh, war, homicide, suicide, genocide, like these are not fun things to experience. And in the animal kingdom, there is a beautiful story that I love to share of the deer. That in Hebrew is my name. I very much resonate with the deer is they do this migratory pattern, for hundreds of years, thousands of years, who knows how long. And at one point there was a river with water and there was alligators, so they had to be mindful of crossing this river and they'd wait for each one to cross and they're like, oh, did they die yet? All right, I'll go. And they had to do this for, who knows how many generations. And then now there's no longer a river because of the change in the earth and the climate. There's no more threat of alligator. And these new deer, these baby deer, are still walking that path,
mm,
afraid that there's something that's gonna attack them and eat them. And that is, in essence, what we are doing as humans based on patterns and programs that we experience. And through these modalities, if it's breath work, if it's astrology, if it's gene keys, if it's plant medicine, if it's religion in some ways,
yeah,
we can move through those parts of ourselves that we don't have to do it the same way. We can feel safe. We don't have to be in that reptilian survival, everything's going to kill us, all these threats. And to move forward as a collective consciousness, those shadows, if we look at them together, we all have our own shadows that are very imprinted on us that we come into this earth with. And then there's more. So you can just start with 11 or 12, go through that on your
yeah,
own journey, know that it might be more prevalent in your life, just like if you're a Leo or a Libra and, a life path 1 or a life path 8, whatever framework you use to kind of support you in walking through this mad world, to have some sense of it. Otherwise, we're like, what are we doing here? We're all like just walking each other home. Nobody really knows. We have to pretend somewhat to know. And having some of these frameworks that can allow us at least the trust in the moment. And then eventually, never, in my opinion, don't tie too much to any framework. Always be willing to challenge it, any master, guru, whatever it is, and be able to say, all right, let me check that. Let me see if that's true for me. Don't give my power away also to any of these systems. Use them as parts of how it gets you to this path, that, path home, wherever that is, that hero's journey, and really be mindful and question. And if it doesn't feel right to your system, check that. And, just don't blindly say, hey, whatever you say, I'm going to do that. Like, really ask, like, are you sure?
yeah. Yeah, the absolution of agency to the collective is so dangerous, right? That you'd be like, that's where those mind viruses come, right? Those social mind viruses. And then suddenly the trauma of the collective is taking you over, right? And then suddenly you're in this momentum that can lead to some really dangerous things that we know very intimately of what can happen in social systems when there's too much trauma, right? And like that, and the story that I love the most about this work is that we can be the change. And I know it sounds so cliche, is like be the change you want to see in the world. It's like, no, 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 no. Actually, be the change that you want to see in the world. Like you dealing with your crap, right?
Mhm.
The it's on my shirt, work on your shit, right? The work on your shit aspect of this is your responsibility. to be the tide changer in the world, right? That we can say, if it takes one person to create a movement, if it takes one person to be the catalyst of the boat moving towards connection and rather than moving towards destruction, then we all have this profound ability to respond and deal with this at scale, right? And this conversation that we're having is that, I think, right, is to say, the more
Absolutely.
people listen to this, the more people say, whether you do kung fu, breath work, yoga, whatever you do, religion, maybe your thing, like whatever the thing that you do, the framework that you do, it has all of them have things in common, right? They have these archetype stories. They have this stories of dealing with your stuff so you can become the best version of yourself. And then if we all do that a little bit, like imagine where we can be as a social system or as a society in the future. And anybody that says like any systems that are otherwise are just teachers to push us and poke us and prod us in order to get to that place, right? Because the patterns will
And
show up.
I'll be so frank to say that is universal truth, in a sense of that is a universal law of, if we take sovereignty, if we all just check in a little bit more of where it is that we're showing up and how we want to show up, and just take that ownership and responsibility for our own vessel before we could really put it on anyone else. And mothers have it really hard, fathers
Mm.
as well, but the pressures of where your father, I don't have physical children, but I can see, yes, it can be so challenging for parents and how they want to see their kids. But what ends up happening a lot of times, I don't think we've gone to one constellation where it doesn't start with the mother and father in some way
Yeah.
of everything,
Yeah.
that we reject, we become in a way.
Mhm.
And we're like, we never want to be like our parents. And we find ourselves doing the same thing because we're blaming them in a way, consciously or subconsciously, unless we have the awareness. And you mentioned the ability to respond instead of react.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people are just reacting. And if you're just reacting, that comes from a fear state. And that's the shadow frequency state when you're talking some of the gene key stuff. And then through the shadow, we unlock the gift. And that gift allows us, if we can, to your point, be more in our gifts. Like, think of what that is. We all came in here with unique gifts, not to be in this constant fight or flight, divide, you this, me that. We came here with unique gifts on this earth. We incarnated here. Maybe you don't believe this. That's okay. We came here with specific things that no one else has the imprint that you have. No one else has the same thumbprint,
Mm.
right? The same biological constitution, even if you're a twin. So you came in here with gifts to share. And if we can embody that, if we can tune into that, and we're all walking around in our gift frequency, like we're all just giving gifts to each other
Yeah.
instead of shadows to each other and projections. And you get a gift, I get a gift, like Oprah, and we're all, getting
You get a
cars.
car. Yeah.
You get a car.
You know, the,
You get a gift. Yeah.
I was listening to Rogan about this, and Joe Rogan talks a lot about this stuff, and he's like, me becoming a parent gave me the perspective that person was a wounded little child, right? That person was a kid. That kid may have for XYZ reason didn't get their needs met, right? That they have this core wound of what that looks like. That guy that cut you off in traffic, that hates life, whatever it is, something must have happened. And so it creates a space for grace. And grace is one of
Mm.
my favorite words in the world because it has such it just has such
Such a loving
a loving
frequency.
frequency.
It just is
It
there.
really is a universal, loving, divine frequency to say, I
Mhm.
can afford some people grace. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
that it absolves them from the consequences of their actions, but I can hold a place in my heart for them regardless of what happens. It's like, shit. You're
Hmm.
like,
And
nah, that's so hard.
yeah,
you know?
and that's the forgiveness, right? That's the
Man.
oponono of when we can not only forgive others, it really starts with forgiving ourselves.
Yeah.
And we remain in this shame, guilt of the decisions we made before we even blame others. We're doing it more on ourselves, subconsciously or consciously, of like, I should have known better. And I just had this conversation with a dear brother, Brandon, on this path, and he was showing me how I was doing that because I hold myself to such a what happens a lot of times, maybe not for everyone, but for me, when you walk this spiritual path, if that's the right word, or if you're a man of integrity and authenticity and you're leading with your heart.
If you'd like to attend one of our events, please check the description below. We'll provide details and registration information for an event near you. If you're enjoying this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. It truly helps us with the algorithm, and this allows this message to reach more people. No noise, just clarity and real transformation. Thank you.
You never want to intentionally harm someone.
Yeah.
You don't want to cause anyone pain. You don't want to make a mistake. And that perfectionism can be a trap in itself, because I got to be all love and light. And, I can't be human. I can't, make a mistake. And I can see that be a challenge for many people, that fear of making the mistake keeps them trapped. And then the fear of saying I have to be perfect, and like they don't even take the step because they're like, oh, well, I wasn't consistent, or, I stopped the diet plan, or I stopped the, meditation, and I didn't do 30 days straight. So I'm never going to do it again. And we keep ourselves in that limited space where we can't give ourselves the grace, as you mentioned, to just be like, it's okay if you missed a day, just get back on it tomorrow or the next day. Don't all of a sudden say, I give up. It's never possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And the forgiveness piece, and I talked about this on like 2 podcasts ago, or one is like, we were doing this on forgiveness, right? It's like in English to forgive is to say, first, there's an implication. First, I'm judging, and then I'm absolving you of guilt. Like I'm taking that piece away. I think the word has a lot more nuance in Hebrew, and because of your background, I think that going through this is there's like salak is SALACH, right? Is to pardon, to forgive. That's almost exclusively used for God forgiving people. It's like we can't use that, right? That's not for us to. In constellations, we say what happened. Like that's between you and God. Whatever to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God's, right? And then nasa, right? To lift, to carry away, to bear away. This word is often translated as forgive, but the literal meaning is to carry, right? Then there's kaphar, right? To cover, to atone. This word Yom Kippur comes from, right? Mm-hmm. The root idea is covering something that is no longer produces consequences. And then I don't know how to pronounce this, but to blow out, to wipe away. It's MACHAAH, right? So the word is like wiping off ink of a document, the erasing of the record, right? Is like, so you can, shuv, to return. And so it's like, I'm not forgiving you, but I'm returning this emotion or this energy back to you, right? And we only have really one word in English for it. It was just forgiving. It's like there, and it creates like the language, the language like eliminates some of the nuance. And we say, and in English, we talk about this forgiveness is like, I have the power to forgive you. It's like, no, I don't. I do not have the power to forgive you. I have the power to say, okay. I have the power to say, it's no longer an issue. I have a power to say, I'm no longer going to carry this. I have the power to say, what happened, and we can move on from here. But I can't say, Svi, you transgressed against me and you punched me in the face, and I'll be like, I'm going to take away the guilt. And it's like, please forgive me. I'm like, I can't take away that guilt from you. That's between you and God, right? To rustle that part out is, I think there's so much more nuance into that conversation.
There is. And if you're okay, we could talk about that a little bit.
Because I've been doing that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. So it happens to be one of the most challenging. And the minute you think of justice, or anyone, I'm not speaking for them, but that feeling of like, who decides justice? The way we see the court system, a judge, jury, executioner, like this is not just. But when you really go into this city, a city means a mastery, ultimate enlightenment, Christ consciousness, Buddha energy of like its ultimate essence. And so this justice says there is no right or wrong. As you mentioned, there is, but it's a feeling of liberation when you are just. And so the English language can be, human language in general, but yes, it can be very limited. And there are such things as what people might call spells. The power of now, manifestation, and how we speak words into existence. And if we do mantras, and why many cultures all around the world use mantras. And so if you are speaking out let's say, lower frequency words or energy, what is that saying to your body, like
Mm.
somatically as well? What is that saying to your cells? And so when you say I can't, when, things like in this nature. And so some would say there's some scripture out there that there's a reason for some of these words to keep the lower frequency. We won't go into that rabbit hole. But at the same time, it's to be very mindful of what we say, how we say it. And to your point, so many times people go into, let's say, these healing things, and it's almost like when you say I forgive you, it's coming from your own ego.
Yes.
Like you
Yeah.
are telling them, like, but they never even possibly apologized for
Yeah.
it, or
Yep.
they were not sorry. So I was playing with the Ponopono when I was doing constellations, instead of saying I'm sorry, to go into love, because I was like, okay, like, are you sorry? Like, am I sorry? Like, what does that word mean? Sometimes it feels, Michelle says it all the time, like it could be feel very disempowering. So coming
Mm.
from a place of in your power, which so many people, it blows my mind, right? We don't love that word because of the shadow frequency of power and the patriarchy and these energies that, have patriarchy, meaning not men, but how society has been, and it's not been balanced, and it's just been like greed, power, money, these, really shadow frequency things not coming from love. And that diminishes our ability to really see that other person. And you're like, oh yeah, you hurt me. And through religion and through our traumas, I had a brother tell me a story of, like, he grew up in the Catholic Church, and he was repenting for his sins at like second grade. He's like, I'm just a kid, and like, what am I repenting for? And I'm not sure if you saw the movie Sinners, but it was this worldwide hit. It won the most, or was nominated for the most amount of Oscars. I was so fascinated. It was technically a horror movie, but it wasn't. And I was like, oh, I wasn't sure if I wanted to watch it, and then got the download to watch it. And it talks about how through religion, in the shadow frequency of it, where they keep you in your sin, meaning like you can't ever move past that, your shame. If you did something, in the past, like you can never repent. But that word, we just, came through Ash Wednesday. I like was going through that, and I was really sitting with it. It said, from dust to dust. We come in, as dust, we leave as dust, and what you do on this journey. But to really, whatever that term repent, I'm using air quotes, like I don't know where I'm from, but we use repent, but then we do the same thing again. And so there's a level to that of, like, if you're really going to say, I don't want to do that again, and men I've found have definitely, I mean, all people, men and women, but men can really let their sins, and that's what this movie about. If they're alcoholics, if they're sexaholics, if they're, abusers, if they committed crimes, murdered, they can forever hold themselves in that trap that I can never be sovereign
Yeah.
because of the sins I committed.
Yeah.
They attach to being like, that's my sin. I'm sticking to it. I'm going to make excuses why I can do it. If I'm a drug addict, these things. And they're like, that's my life. I can't be anything more. And they let that control because of society says, let's exclude you. And we love that word, right? Don't exclude, and like push them to the side. And that creates a constant shame and guilt. You made a mistake when you were 10 years old. You hit someone with a car, but whatever the thing is. And then forever you're holding that to your identity, that I could never like let that go.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to. There's so many places that I want to dive into, right? Like on the justice side,
Yes.
on the missing the mark, the sin without being out of alignment, the redemptive quality of some religious practices, and then also like some religious practices that are like, this is how I skirt the system. It's like there's like a fascinating aspect to that, to religion on that side. It's like, well, if you do, so here's the formula. If you repent and you do, X amount of prayers this way and X amount of
Hail
prayers,
Mary.
yeah, it's like, your credit system will get defined, and like,
Loopholes.
yeah, exactly. So like all these technical loopholes, and there's some that are more on the loopholes than others, right? So it's just interesting to see that part. But the part that I like, I always try to distill things to simplicity, right? It's to say,
Thank you.
through the assumption of radical responsibility, there's an alignment with the divine, right? And like, I don't know if you read, I bring this book up so much, man. And it's and I talk about it way too much, but Dan Booth Cohen's book of I Carry Your Heart in My Heart, Family Constellations in Prison.
Mm.
It's one
Oh,
of,
you just heard it on the last one.
yeah, it's just like, I talk about it way too much, and I have
Really
a
open.
copy for you if you want it, but
Please, yeah.
he did Family Constellations in Bay State Prison for 5 years. Right. And the volunteers that came into the prison system said it was the most sacred place in the world. Like it's the most sacred place that they'd ever been. Right. And so that through that process of redemption, right, a person that by societal standards, by justice standards, right, are, top tier violators, right, of our social agreements, are excluded, permanently excluded, that can have a spiritual redemption is so beautiful. It's difficult for me to even think about it, right? Is to say that is in the presence of the magnificence of God, right? I don't know how else to say that part. It's like it really spiritually broke me down and built me back up because of how much it moved me to say that there's this quality that if we go through this process, that on the other side we'll be closer to that divine power, right? And when we talk about justice, it's like, what if we said, the justice system is like, we're breaking the agreements that we've made as a society, right? In order for us to go from chaos to order, right? And sometimes those agreements are broken. It's, what are laws other than all of us saying, hey, I'm going to agree for you not to punch me in the face, and I'm going to agree for you not to I'm not going to punch you in the face. Is that cool? Does everybody agree on that?
Yeah, we agree.
These will be the consequences if that happens, right? You'll get punished, you'll get excluded, with all those things. I don't think the exclusion part is the best, right? I don't think that's the right way to do it, rather than having a system of redemption. At the end of the day, that's what it is. But our brokenness, same way in religion as it does in justice, weaponizes those loopholes to be carried out against other people, right? Our adversaries.
So may I give you, I'm actually going to read from this. This is the civic level of justice.
Okay.
Not necessarily what we knew of justice in the society, current level of it. And so justice at the civic level is what happens when you are no longer fighting reality. It is the deep knowing that everything is exactly as is, must be for the evolution of consciousness, not passive, not complacent, aligned. What justice is not. It is not revenge. It is not karma will get them. It is not moral superiority. It is not spiritual bypassing. If there's an emotional charge, it's still in the gift of the or shadow frequency. Justice at the city level has zero resentment. What justice is when your personal will dissolve into universal law. You stop trying to correct the world from ego. You become a living calibration of truth. And because of that, things reorganize around you. It is an effortless authority.
I love that. Wow. Jeez.
And so the hard truth, but nothing but the truth, but not my truth. Most people who talk about justice are still in reaction. So when, all the stuff going on in the world, that person got justice, OJ, this, like all these things. True justice only appears after grief is fully felt, blame is dropped, control is surrendered, personal identity softens. Until then, it's just moral positioning. And so, I see this in society all the time. I have a real challenge with this. We're on social media. We're feeling like we're protesting. We're feeling like we're standing for something. What's the next thing? The shooting, the politics, this. But we're coming from a place of that's better. This is mine. Or if it's divide, and if it's red, blue, if it's immigration, no immigration, abortion, no abortion. We talked about this last time, and it becomes very, very divisive, right? I mean, it's like the story I share, you put red ants and black ants in a jar, they don't fight. You shake them all up, they start attacking each other.
Yeah.
And that's something I really walk this path of. People think neutrality is passive, but neutral in a way of saying, like you mentioned, who am I to say that is absolutely better? And I've been there. I've been like, this is the only way. I push people in that way. I have this shadow of four. Like, it has to be this way. How can it be any other way? And then, of course, I ate my own, dog food, as you say, like,
Yeah.
and realize, like, all right, that was immature. I wasn't embodied with that. I put such a divide in myself. But then this new evolution of myself in how I move forward, I do find there to be a universal truth coming from
Mm.
love. And it's not even, I want to say it's subtle. It's not. It takes a lot of inner work to really come from that place of compassion and empathy, and to see it, and to still have ego and bias because I'm human
Yeah.
and you're human, to still be like, hey, I don't vibe with that. But at the same time, saying it exists in this reality, it's part of this reality. Whoever created this place did it for a reason. It exists for a reason, right? What the polar opposite, the negative, the positive, the charge, to give us an idea of, okay, how do we know what love is if we don't know what hate is?
Yeah.
Or how do we know what, the best dinner is if we didn't have a bad dinner, or comparison? But that could be a trap, when you can constantly compare because you had this epic travel in Bali, and then I come back to, a city, and I'm like, oh man. And so we can find ourselves in that loop. But ultimately, how do we know what is if we don't have that other side? Yeah.
Well, that I think that brings up it. We kind of look at everything like good or bad or us, this event, and it's like, for me, the kind of the part that I'm arriving to, I haven't arrived to this place, but the place that I'm getting to is like, is this in alignment or is this out of alignment?
Hmm.
Like, that's at the
Hmm.
end of the day, that, because that doesn't have any judgment. It doesn't have any, if it's not, and I think that I use a different word, but is this a fuck yes, right? It's like the fuck yeah. Like, when
Hmm.
I, so recently, for people that are not us, right? For people that are listening, I called you a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I was, Svi helped me with some stuff with my business, right? To work through some stuff. And I was like, it's you coming to Chicago and doing that weekend for us, and helping us work out some stuff on Zulu One, for some stuff for the company, for some stuff for me personally, some stuff for my brother-in-law, was a fuck yeah. It was like I was jumping out of my seat. It was like I knew it was truer than truth. It was the most aligned thing that we could do at that moment to do. And that's where that it like clicks in. And some
Hmm.
people go their whole lives without ever experiencing that. The universe and God conspiring in your favor to say, God's like, yeah, you're on the right track, kid. This is the thing that you're supposed to do, because it comes from alignment, not from resistance, not being out of sync.
Can I touch on
Yeah,
that?
of course.
My heart is just beating, feeling that full yes. And I started this retreat among many other initiations that I was a full yes, but actually sometimes not. But I was pushed by many people to, it wasn't even peer pressure. They're like, okay, I should listen to my mom in this moment. I should listen
Mm,
to this other person to do this initiation. Even though I was like, nope, I don't want to do another initiation. I don't want to open up another portal. I want to get grounded. I want to start doing my work, blah, 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 all the excuses we make. And so I started this Gene Keys retreat. It's one of his last transmissions, and the founder, Richard Rudd, and we opened up the Life's Work sphere with 3,000 people. And that day, that day, you call me. And the Life's Work is from the shadow of corruption, which we've been talking about.
yeah.
Well, that'll be another podcast. The gift of equilibrium, which is to be balanced in everything I do, and to bring harmony, is the citic level of bringing harmony to spaces, to families, to businesses. Is part of my essence. And then you call me and say, want to go to Chicago? And I was like, of course. Didn't know what, didn't know why. You didn't give me any details. It's like when your best friend calls you and is like, pack your bags, we're going. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't know why, what,
Yeah.
who. Wasn't thinking about any of the logistics, any of the mind. It was that full yes. And then in the same day, I get a call from my mother, who my brother went to the emergency room,
Mm,
and it was really serious. And I was like, oh, this is a tough choice. And
yeah.
we face these tough choices every day of our lives, especially if we have families, but in our own internal minds all the time. And I was like, if I go, I'm going to have to leave my mom alone with my brother. He's not going to feel well. How is she going to do the things, and all the things that, of course, my heart wanted to be there. Maybe they might not agree, but that's another. But, whatever that is, they know that I love my family. And ultimately, I said yes, went. It was so magical. I was complete. It was 2 degrees. I felt warmer than, an island beach. We drank amazing cacao. We got to be with your family, see the kids playing, see snow. but the constellations were magical. And that was a really, really tough decision. And we have to make those constantly. And if we aren't in our agency and if we aren't in our alignment, a lot of the times we're going to make the one generally that is out of fear more so, and what keeps us in our comfort zone as well. And that comfort zone can be nice. It can be a place we all want to get on that
Yeah.
recliner and, have that $5,000 chair vibrating and, put the Netflix on, and
Yeah.
none of it's wrong.
Yeah.
None of it's wrong. But we get in that comfort zone of, okay, what does it take to move forward? How do I move past these karmic loops, these things that are holding me back? And the only way to do that is to take one step at a time. You're going to mess up. It's going to be challenging. You're going to ask yourself why you're doing this 1,000,001 times, because the easier route absolutely is just staying in your comfort zone. But I firmly believe your comfort zone is where you go to die. Evolution,
Yeah.
nature, it cannot just sit around. And so we all have our challenges. We all have our limitations. We all have our reasons why we can't do something. But if something doesn't feel right, the longer you stay in that energy, it's going to eat at you. And that's where sickness comes from. That's where disease comes from.
Yeah.
Look, there's other reasons, but that to me, like if the mental, spiritual, physical vessel of this human form is not nurtured, it's very easy to lose our agency.
Yeah. No, that story reminds me of, have you seen The Hobbit? Have you seen that movie,
Yeah.
The Hobbit, where the meme is like, we're going on an adventure,
so.
He's like running out of.
Yeah. I've seen the meme. Yeah.
He's running and he's like, we're going on an adventure.
Yeah.
And then, that part, and I think what you're talking about in general terms is systemic resistance, right? Is when the treasure is near, the dragon appears, right? Is like, and that dragon can be, like you said, an illness, your tire blows out, or your kid, bumps himself in the head and they have to get stitches. And that systemic resistance is like, it shows us the strength of the forces that we're dealing with, right?
Remember, you couldn't find your wallet.
Oh yeah,
your daughter, like literally, all that stuff I'm going on the trip.
I mean, literally, this is the craziest thing, and we'll get into a little bit of the phenomenological, but I'm working. I work from home, right? So I'm literally sitting, working, doing the stuff. And we have a flight to catch at, I don't know, it was like 2:00, 3 o'clock, something like that. We have to drive down to Miami and take the flight. Literally, as you walk in the door, and I'm like, I had 5 different calls from work, and I'm on my way to do a constellation on work, right? To do a systemic constellation on work that you expertly facilitated for me. Like 3, fires, not major fires, but 3 fires that I could be like, oh no, crap. This is like, it's like the system it's so weird to say what I'm about to say.
Wild.
But it's like the system literally activated. It's like, no, don't do this. Don't go into this thing. I could have been like, yeah, the vibes are telling me that we shouldn't do this, right? My mom was like, why are we doing that? And I'm like, why are we doing? The systemic resistance on that side showed up. The systemic resistance on my side showed up. On the business side showed up. And then I literally couldn't find my wallet. I'm running around the house like a madman, and you're like, dude, whatever, man. No worries, dude. You'll find it eventually.
And I'm like,
I'm literally running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to find my wallet. And then I'm like, okay, take a deep breath. Where's my wallet? Found my wallet, got my stuff, did everything. We got on the flight, and then we proceeded to have the most magical, magical experiences, God coincidences. We're on the right track. Everything was in alignment. Weekends that I've ever had, which was, dude, I just want to say for the record, man, thank you so much for doing that, because I called you literally on Wednesday that he's like, hey man, do you want to go? You want to fly up to Chicago on Friday? And you're like, I'm packing my adventure bag. And we went on an adventure, and it was really cool to do that, man. So
it was literally,
you can't imagine how grateful, and it's 11:11 right now.
Like, bag. Yeah. You can't make it up. I mean, 11:11 does it mean something? Does it not? Right? These synchronistic, magical, beautiful moments. And in the Quechua, we say Aini, we as in their indigenous tribe, but Aini is equal reciprocity. And if we can be more in that as just everything we do, if not whatever you're saying, I'm feeling that times a billion, that I got to show up, that I got to be there for your family, that I got to be there for others, that I got to meet Hans Hellinger and see him in a constellation, your mom's dog, and
Yeah.
just seeing your sister's kids and playing video games with them and serving you guys, just holding space and being there and just being like, this is what else do I want to be doing?
Yeah.
Where else do I want to be? Like, supporting a family system, seeing your family and my family, and seeing the synchronicities, similarities, the mirrors, and being like, look at what we're all doing. We're healing generational things. We know that term blind loyalty, how real it is. And
Hmm.
for everyone out there, whether you might be aware of it or not, that systemic resistance is that blind loyalty of like being in that lower frequency is what we think out of love. So by staying in that frequency, we're like, no, we can't raise our frequency. We can't really find peace or love or happiness because our family did it. And for everyone out there, like including myself and John, like, no, they don't want anything else more than for you to find peace and love and to choose differently. And all the things, look, this could be a different podcast. Not maybe everyone energetically has the best interest that we call ancestors of the light. That's a whole
Yeah.
nother
Yep.
conversation.
Yep.
But
Yep. That's a good
you
point.
have more light, right? It only takes a little bit of light to shine on the darkness.
Hmm.
And so if you can have that support, it's very challenging to do alone, to be surrounded by people that are at that frequency, that are kind of holding you up, holding you accountable when you might make a setback, right? That's why community is so important. That's why being around others and being like-minded around whatever hobbies, how nurturing, right? It's a basic human need, is to feel connected to another human, the amount of serotonin, the amount of energy, the amount of heart medicine that comes from that. So being with you and your family, like, it's like I, did the best love drug I've ever done. It was
I
just pure
appreciate that,
love
man.
and laughing. And we were making jokes of like, that's what she said with your family. And it's like,
Yeah.
it couldn't be any more fun.
Yeah, we like to have fun, man, and I'm just so grateful that you're part of this crazy adventure that we're doing this, man, and you hold such a special place in my heart. Your mom, your family, I'm just so grateful for everything that you guys have done for us, and how you've helped us go through stuff, right? And I hope that you feel the
Mm.
same from our side, and I know
More than the
I
same.
know that
Yeah.
that's the case, and I love having these conversations with you. I love being shoulder to shoulder with you, going through these incredible adventures and challenges and stuff that we're doing, and it's such a gift, man. And I can't say that enough, and I want to say that for the record that it's a really
For
beautiful
the
thing.
record.
Yeah, for the record, for
Uh,
all of
it's all
to always
video,
have,
it's all
right?
the ether.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. So
but likewise, more than likewise, just I feel that in my heart, uh, to have that kind of relationship or gift, knowing, no matter what, even like you said, it's not going to be like that. But if we never talked again, to know that we've been able to impact each other's lives and our family's life in such a loving, high service of way, how you've helped my mom, how I've helped your mom, like how we just get to support each other. If someone's low, give me a call, vice versa, knowing that we can't carry it all alone, especially, as men and women, but
yeah,
like this lone wolf man thing, got the job, got the kids, everything's on me, provide that pressure that, men are putting on themselves. Like, no wonder, that it's very, very difficult. And so find your brothers, find your sisters, find community circles, allow these moments to happen where you just get that like pure, and do it for strangers and smile and just be kind and
yeah,
just watch the magic, that happens in your life. And I get it. We all have our stuff, but like, let that anger turn into love. Like,
yeah,
anger is a portal to love. Grief is a portal to love. Sadness is a portal to love. And if we can just allow ourselves a little bit more of that clarity, of that agency, a little bit more time in nature, get some sun, go to do something you enjoy, laugh. It's very simple, but we make it very complicated. But I love
yeah.
you,
Love you too, brother.
and I could talk to you for 8 hours.
We
Uh,
usually do, so you know how that is. Yeah, but Svi, I don't want to be selfish. And keep you all to myself, man. If you can talk to the audience and tell them how to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in contact with you, your social media, your kind of your social ecosystem of how to spread this gift out, man. And if for anybody out there, one of the best things that you could do as an entrepreneur, as a father, as a man, is to connect with this human being, this incredible human being, and make an appointment. It's life-changing. So yeah, I'm grateful for you, brother.
I think it's one of the first times I'm allowing myself to receive that, because I trust you so much and I feel my heart just beaming. So Svi Soudai, SVI, first name, last name, SOUD as in David, AI. I don't know how many times I spelt my name out as a kid because it was unique. So I just found that to be a funny loop. But that's my Instagram, social. And then, if you want to contact me there, I'm not necessarily as active as I probably should be. But that, has some of my constellation stuff, my travel stuff. And then we can, contact on phone, ask John, email, and would love to be of service. Really, nothing brings me more joy, and really excited just for this adventure, for where we're going as a collective consciousness, the change that's happening, and just trusting yourself more, trusting each other more, trusting life more. And from there, I do really believe anything is possible.
Thank you, brother. Love you, man.
Oh, love you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zulu One Podcast. If you found value in today's podcast, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything to us. And thank you for being part of this journey.